All right, welcome to another BuffZone video. I'm Brian Howell. Please be joined by Matt Smith. And Matt, we're not doing this on a Sunday like usual. I had a little family thing. I had to drive my son down to Tennessee this last weekend. So he's moving out. He moved out of the house. And so we were unable to do it until Tuesday afternoon. But this gives us a chance to not only recap NDSU briefly, but then also talk about the Nebraska game coming up. But first off, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I'm glad that you just got that extra opportunity to put some more miles on the car. You
Yeah.
got some coming up this season. Let's get some more on there. Just warm it up, right? Get the road trip vibes kind of going, and then we'll be good to roll into the 2024 season.
Well, the players like to say, practice is harder than the games, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you
And
just got to get those reps in, Brian.
right, the road trip I just did this last weekend was much harder than the road trip I'm going to do this weekend going to
That's gonna be
Lincoln.
a
So,
breeze.
yeah, Lincoln's going to be nothing. So,
Well, they
yeah,
always say you want practice to be harder than the game.
right,
So there
yeah.
you go.
So there we go. But let's recap North Dakota State and the Buffs. I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, they got a nice win, 31-26, and people are going to pick it apart. I do find it funny how sometimes the goalpost changes a lot of times, and all summer leading into it was like, oh my gosh, this is a tough matchup for Colorado. Why would you schedule this game? This is a brutal game. They always beat these teams. ESPN right before was like, CU's on upset alert, all this stuff. Colorado wins the game. It's like, wow, you only beat an FCS team by 5 points. Like, wait a minute. Everybody said all summer, all offseason, this is going to be a really tough matchup. To me, that's a good win. There's some things to clean up. Yes, you take the win. Great. You're 1-0, move on.
Yeah, North Dakota State made a really big fan out of me that, maybe I really wasn't before, just the way that they do business. I was really impressed with their program. They're going to win a ton of games at the
Yeah.
FCS level this year. I think they'll be right in the mix for a title. This might be one of the few they lose if they stay healthy. And I also couldn't help but think, what if they had Cole Wisniewski? What if they had that back that was out, right? So you never know. But yes, a solid win that left you plenty to work on, which I think is a good thing for coaches, but it is slightly concerning because some of the red flags that popped up were the red flags that we had questions about heading into it. Now, it's not an indictment of what's going to happen, but you've got to build on what you performed, how the performance that you gave in week one. So, good win. You had to start it off right. The style points probably didn't look the way it could have because you beat yourself in some critical situations, right? Some stupid penalties here and there, and not many, three of them, but some, in the first half, two on third down where you're off the field, which is a credit to their defense too, which is improved, I think. It just took a little while to see that. And we want things right now, right now. We want
Yeah.
these, instant gratification. There are 46 new transfers into the program this year with almost, was it six new position coaches? So it wasn't going to be a well oiled machine to start week one, and I didn't expect it to be. Unfortunately, the ways in which they struggled were similar to last year, which I think has everybody a little anxious moving forward, including them, by the way. So we'll see how it progresses. But hey, I mean, you can't go 2-0 if you don't go 1-0, Brian.
Right. And look, we said all along, not just you and I, but everybody said all along that like you can't lose to North Dakota State. Well, they didn't, and so
Right.
you get that win and you move on. And yes, there's things to improve upon, and we're going to talk about it because that's what we do, right? So let's start with some positives. Give me a couple of things: one on offense, one on defense that you really liked about Thursday night.
Shador is who, I've been trying to tell people he is. It's the truth. He's the number one overall pick in the draft if they win enough games this year. And by enough, I mean like five. John Elway was the first overall pick in the draft when he was a senior at Stanford and they won 5 games.
And never
So
played in a bowl game.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so he's the real deal. He's as advertised. I think he's better. And the other thing that was very clear to me is the symmetry with Pat Shermer works for him. And it was on display late third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, when I believe they really put the game away with that 17 play drive. That was graduate level operation of an offense, which I think we saw at times from him last year. But that wasn't a drive that they could put together last year, at least in my opinion. I think that, you had a penalty at some point, something would have gone wrong. It felt like not on Thursday night. Shador was in complete control of the offense, checking into what he wanted because he knew what he was going to see pre-snap, where he spoke about it this summer, how there were a lot of choice routes and a lot of stuff was happening in the offense that was beyond his control. So as a quarterback trying to be an anticipatory thrower, which is his style because he wants to be a pocket passer, you've got to know where your guys are going to be because A, there's a lot going on, and B, you have some really talented players and you want to make sure you can spread the ball out. And it's tough if these guys who you only just met a few months ago are the ones calling the shots in the offense when they really shouldn't be. That's a system where if you're together for like 4 years, then I think you can really find some success with it because you are on the same page with everyone. So Shador is as advertised, stepping up in the pocket, making some big time throws. Unfortunately, just a little bit too much pressure in his face. I heard Joel Klatt say that they allowed about a 30% pressure rate. That's still too much. That's got to get cleaned up. The offensive line, I thought, was better, but they've got a ways to go still, and I think that's clear. It was good to see Jordan Seaton out there. I thought he looked really good. Very impressive for a freshman making his career debut at left tackle. Let's see some other good. And this receiving core. So I think they've got the best quarterback in the country and the number one pick in the draft. And I watched college football all weekend. I didn't see a better receiving core. Ohio State's got a good one. LSU's got some dudes. You know, USC, their guys made some impressive plays. I mean, you go down the list, Tennessee, Texas, Alabama. I don't think anybody has a better collection of talent at receiver than CU. We just haven't seen it all yet, and I think we will because, again, we talked about this. There's going to be a different mouth to feed every week based upon what Shador's reading on the field, who's open, right? What are they showing me? Will Shepard will pop off eventually, and so will LeJontay Wester, even though I thought he was impactful whenever he made big plays. I mean, Jimmy, Travis, sensational, both of those guys. Travis, man, you know, the one thing I'll say is I think Travis is faster this year, which, I mean, he was working with that conditioning coach, right? The speed coach we heard about in that ESPN piece. You can tell his athleticism has just taken another stride.
Yeah.
There was not a bead of sweat on him post game. Not a bead of sweat. And I mean, there's that line from Seinfeld. Costanza always says, like, you know, the shower didn't take after the gym. Travis's showers always take because he's just in freak condition, right? So, and we got to speak to him. How about that? I mean, and he also kind of told us a little bit why. So, yeah, I like that. Defensively, the adjustments they made in the second half was important to see. I was concerned at halftime. It was a lot of last year again. And it's tough to really balance what you're seeing. And I'm sorry I'm long-winded here, but it's tough to balance what you're seeing with the fact that it's only one half, right? And you're not trying to overreact too much to just, you know, 2 quarters of play. That's why it was really good to see Livingston in his first opportunity to make some adjustments was able to execute those. So among other things, those are some of the positives that immediately jumped off to me, and I'll let you respond here, but I'll just say good signs, but it felt like some more improvement of the stuff that was already good. There was some good stuff with the defensive line I thought was important, but we do need to see more of a jump. And I think Coach Prime alluded to it today at the press conference, essentially saying, look, we need to turn it up a little bit, another notch when he was talking about the offensive line. I think that kind of applies to everywhere where, okay, everybody's got their feet wet. We know what to expect now. Well, guess what? You're going into a hostile environment there in Lincoln, and everybody better be dialed in because the Nebraska team that played UTEP, they were a little slow out of the gate, but that is going to be a tough game to win. I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, and defensively, I'll agree with you. I mean, it started late first half, honestly, for me. You know, they had given up a field goal and then 2 touchdowns. And then you remember when CU goes for 4th and 1 and they miss it, and you know, North Dakota State takes over like the 34-yard line, the defense held them to a field goal. And I think that was a turning point for that defense right there. Yes, they gave up points, but when you start at the 34-yard line, I don't blame a defense for giving up a field goal there. That was a big moment to only give up a field goal. The next drive right before the half, they force him to punt, and then 2 straight punts to start the third quarter or to start the second half. Yes, Coach Prime wasn't happy about that touchdown drive at the end, and he probably shouldn't have been. You needed to get a stop there, but and they did get 88 yards on that. that desperation drive, which never should have happened.
We didn't get to the negative yet, Brian.
Right.
Just hit me with your
Right.
positives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
defensively overall, I like the
Yeah.
way that they got it together after they made some adjustments, just to echo your point. But to take that even further, I really like the run defense. I mean, I thought they looked a lot better. And again, people can say, "Oh, it's just North Dakota State." That's a really good rushing offense in North Dakota State, and that's the number 4 rushing offense in FCS. Yes, it's FCS. I get it, but this is a little tangent here, Matt. But like,
You're fine.
I want to ask you, like, North Dakota State. I would say there's 40 to 50 FBS teams that North Dakota State's better than.
Easy. I
Right.
think where do you think they finish in the Mountain West? Because it ain't bottom half. I mean, it's top half of the Mountain West.
Maybe the bottom part of the top half, but they're beating half the Mountain West. They're
100%.
winning. They're winning the Sun Belt, right?
They're very comparable. I think they're better than CSU. Based upon what I saw from CSU.
I agree with you.
Easily better than CSU.
So, to me, yes. Let's stop just looking at them. Oh, they're just an FCS team. This is a really good football team that I think, like I said, 40, 50 teams in the FBS that could not beat North Dakota State, if not more. So they held them to 157 yards. That's almost 100 yards below their average from last year.
Rushing
yards.
Yeah. Because that was not the total.
No.
Yeah.
A lot of it was the quarterback, that's still rushing yards. That's a big part of the rushing game. But the running backs had a hard time getting going against the Buffs. So I really like that. Offensively, there's really only one thing. It's the passing game, right? To really like. But I love the fact that Travis and Jimmy had huge games. And I guess I love the fact that we know there's more coming. And we didn't get to see it all. I'm kind of glad that we didn't see big games from everybody because we know it's coming. And I'm looking forward to a Will Shepherd game or 2 or 3, a LeJohntay Wester game or 2 or 3. Jimmy Horn's not going to have that kind of game every single week. Travis is not, although he's the most likely to. But I like that they featured 2 guys, and we know there's plenty more.
Absolutely. I like what you said about their defense getting off the field, right? Deion Hayes lines up offsides, bad mistake, but he just made a huge sack. So, It's like you take and you give away. You don't want the net result to be 0, right? Like, you can't have that. But some good things to see there. Now, the Shiloh play, like, you're almost off the field again. And I like that you brought up the bend don't break, hold them to 3, because that was a characteristic of the 2016 defense. That okay, you can move up and down the field a little bit on us, but in the red zone we're going to lock down and we're going to hold you to 3. And that way we're giving our dynamic, explosive offense, which again they started that 2016 team very strong offensively. It wasn't until later in the season when the games got tougher, weather got colder, that they had to change things. Sorry, I got a train going by here.
That's right.
Anyway, so. What I want to say, though, about their defense is that I think they've got a lot of room to grow. Whereas, like, offensive line, I think there is a lot of room to grow. I'm not exactly sure how far or how much better they'll eventually get. I'm hoping they do. I'm really hoping they do, that they start to gel. Defensively, they didn't even come close to what their ceiling is going to be this year.
Yeah.
My encouragement based upon the second half relies on how much better I think they can be defensively. Levante Bentley's better. Trevor Woods is going to be up and down, right? But I thought up front, Chidozie and Wankwo, okay. Now you got a D tackle. I had a bunch of people come to me this week be like, I didn't realize he was so short. I said, yeah, well, you realize how much of a dog you have to be that short and play that position.
Right.
You gotta be for real. So that's important. He helps out Shane Cokes. Surprised to see BJ Green not start, but Okunlola is also huge. He's got a nice spin move to him. So I think there's potential, but those guys got to get home. I mean, my biggest concern was they struggled to get North Dakota State off the field in the first half. You got to be, and I know penalties, like we just talked about, 2 opportunities killed them, but they did a lot. Like, there were a lot of, look, it was the game plan. Let's extend drives. We talked about this on the last pod. Extend drives, shrink the game. Well, that's what they did. And then CU flipped it on its head in the second half with that 17-play, 80-yard drive that took up 8 minutes. That drive, they held the ball for only 10 seconds fewer than they held it for the entire first half.
Right.
That was impressive. Great momentum to take. And And, I mean, we could talk about a bunch of other things in detail, but the big topic, obviously, up until the end, where you mismanaged that entirely. And whether or not that was Shador, whether or not that was coaching, I'm going to call it both. Okay. Coaches have to be able to tell Shador when he goes out on the field, don't check out of it. I don't care if they put 12 guys in the box. If it's cover zero, run the ball and run out the clock. And it just
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You've got to, it's risk management is what it is there in that scenario. You're too far along in the game not to play that way. And look, I credit Shador, but if you're going to take that chance, you better make that throw. And he didn't. And
Yeah.
luckily they didn't get burned, but it was, I mean, that ball was down at the 4 and he caught it.
Yeah.
So better to learn from that lesson in a win than to have that one be the one that burns you and eventually have to learn from that.
Well, and a couple quick things here. Like defensively, it actually didn't even bother me with that they couldn't get North Dakota State off the field in the first half, only because obviously it does, but like I'm saying it doesn't only because it's game one. It gets a new opponent that with a new head coach that you're trying to figure them out. I thought they figured them out really well. I will say one underrated good defensive play they had that, and even by me, because I didn't even really highlight it until just now as I'm going to talk about it, was them getting the stop on that 2-point conversion by North Dakota
Huge.
State.
Enormous.
Because that totally changed what North Dakota State needed there at the end. North Dakota State might have tied that game if they were able to get that 2-point conversion. So that's huge.
Huge.
So as far as clock, yeah, I totally agree with you. Our buddy Joel Klatt went off about this on his podcast, and I totally agree with him. And he's like, look, you have to run the ball there. It does not matter if you get a single yard. You need to run the ball. And if you do that, North Dakota State gets the ball back with like 5 seconds left. And then they can't do anything. And that's the way you have to run it. And you cannot – I know what Coach Prime is saying. He's like, look, we're taking what they're giving us. Yeah, I understand that, but sometimes you have to
no, but he knows. He knows.
Yes, I know. But
he knows.
You have to play conventional wisdom sometimes and say – because – yes, they might have been giving you the pass, but if you throw incomplete as they did, you cannot stop the clock for the opponent in that situation. You have to take their timeouts and things like that. So yeah, and that's the one thing that everybody criticized Deion last year, Coach Prime last year, was his game day management, and we saw that again the other night. And so that's one thing. Look, Bill McCartney was not great at that either, but won a national title. So you can overcome that, but that was probably the most concerning thing was the way they managed. For me, the most concerning thing of the night was the way they managed those final few minutes.
Look, being a head coach is really tough. Okay.
Yeah.
There is so much going on, especially at field level. You can't see everything. And that's why you see a lot of programs go and bring in like a different game day advisor just to be an extra set of eyes kind of in the background. And look, I'm not saying they need that, but you see that very commonly where it's hey, this is what we have coming up. You got to see it. You need a guy who's seeing like 3 or 4 plays ahead. Right. While you're trying to focus in the moment and also do that. It's not easy to do everything. Everybody has help. So, and it's a new staff really working together. Right. So I imagine I'm hoping that part gets cleaned up because those are easy things to correct. I think one of the other encouraging aspects of this is some of the mistakes they should be easy to correct. We'll see up until they do. But in theory, they're not the big ones. It's like, oh no, we're not completely out-talented at this position or that position. We just got to kind of bring this all and make it more of a cohesive unit. And Coach Prime knows that and understands that. And I believe kind of conveyed that message today, talking about turning everything up a notch. So look, again, their offense, though, has serious quick strike potential. And I was encouraged early. They did look early like they were trying to run the ball. They did run the ball early.
Yeah.
And then they defaulted to the Shador save us mode just a little bit when things got a little hairy. And at the end of the first half, you see why they call that a lose-lose game, right? Because you should win that game if you win the game. So, there's no real extra praise. It's more a sense of relief. But if you lose, it's a disaster. You started to feel that at the end of the first half just a little bit, which is why Coach Prime mentioned at Big 12 Media Day that he wishes Rick didn't schedule that game, clearly.
Yeah.
So all a part of the learning curve, not only for players, but for a coaching staff as well. And you just have to hope you can build because, again, the price of poker goes up. Like there's no soft landing here. That was a really tough game. Now you have a very challenging game. Even though you've got a true freshman quarterback, starting in Dylan Raiola, it's Matt Rule's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to build a program there. And they've got some dudes on that team too. And it's very different in their environment. So again, you've got to clean up a lot in 1 week. And I knew you were going to get the response that you got today when you said, well, most coaches say that, the biggest jumps are made between week 1 and week 2 in a college football season. I knew he's coming back with, well, who?
Who says that?
Who says that? I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, Brian, you walked right into that one. But that was funny. But you're right. I mean, that's a common idiom. That's a common phrase. The most progress made is between week 1 and week 2. Why? Because you get game tape and you can correct a lot of the things that are simple to correct in that environment.
And what I was trying to say to him was, every coach I've ever covered has said that.
Right. Of
So
course.
that's why I'm
course.
asking you that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it was funny though. I just, now that we're around him more and more, now being in year 2, just knowing kind of, more and more how he's going to react, I think, to certain situations at different times. It's just fun. It's entertaining. Anyway, what I will say though, another thing that they're going to have to do is, along with that run game, how did you feel the backs ran? It's tough because this is something you and I talked about, which is why I refused to make projections in the running game. I said, I don't know how it's going to look. Dallin finishes with 9 carries, what Charlie had 5. So Offerdahl on tape didn't look that great in week 1. He just didn't. He just didn't. So I think that's a situation where, why is Isaiah Augustov not in there? And maybe it's because of pecking order. Well, Charlie's not going to get a ton of opportunities because they need at least to prove himself that he can handle it. And it's nothing against him because I really like Charlie, but you have to go with the productive player, even though Charlie means a lot to that team. So is Augustov ready? Can you get Hood ready? Is he more suited to pass protect because of his size? I know Micah Welch is the runner they want in there, but I told you, I saw in the well-off media videos this summer, he's getting blown up in pass protection, and we didn't really have full confirmation because it's one snap here and one snap there. Well, Coach Prime essentially alluded to us today. The reason that you're not seeing Welch and Hood is because, well, Shador has a lot of control at the line of scrimmage, and if he sees a look that a defense gives him, well, he checks into a play, and all of a sudden he's got Micah Welch as the guy he needs to be in pass protection on a big, whatever third down. That's a problem. So that's why Coach Prime said the game will dictate it. The situation will dictate it because some of those guys I just don't think are ready for that yet. Hayden was encouraging. I'd like to see a little bit more. Stepped out of a nice tackle. Again, this is something that I've said multiple times this summer. They don't have a special back in that room. It's going to be by committee, and they're going to have to find a way to have a guy be able to make a little something happen because the run blocking is just not going to be perfect this year. It's not. It'll be better, and hopefully they do get better, but they're going to have some guy go out and be able to make some plays like some of the backs we've seen here in the past.
Yeah, and Hayden, 4 of his carries, there's that drive where they missed the 4th and 1. Well, all 4 plays were Dallin Hayden carries. That's almost half of his carries, and his longest run of the night.
How do you build rhythm?
Was that first down run? So I give him credit. They did try. That was an all run, 100% running drive, and they didn't even get 10 yards. And so that's concerning, right? And 2 of them were 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. And even Coach Prime said after the game, you have to get those. I mean, that's when you show what you are as a front. And he goes, I told the offensive line, I believe in you. We've got to get that. And he's right. They got to get it. And so one of the things that surprised me, and maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, Matt, but as much as we've heard about all off season, like we know we got to run the ball. We got to do this, got to do that. And what's the key to the run game is the tight ends. The tight ends hardly played. Sam Hart had 1 snap. I thought he was going to be their top tight end. He played 1 snap on offense. Savell Smalls played a handful of snaps. I was a little surprised Savell was the top tight end, but overall, they hardly ever use the tight end. And it's hard to get that run game going if you're not going to bring that tight end in. If Michael Welch is your guy that can run the ball, I think you need to bring that tight end in there a little bit more. Help him out in that pass protection on those throwing downs so that he's in there, and you've also got an extra blocker for him in the run game. So I was a little surprised they didn't use the tight ends more in a game like this where they knew it was going to be physical.
I'm trying to think how I want to answer this. So there's a couple things at play here. Number one, I agree. The lack of use of a tight end in this offense is because they don't have one to use. Let's just call it what it is, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
don't use it very much, but at the very same time, a tight end is extremely effective if you want to use that guy in the run game. It was one of the areas last year where it actually frustrated me to the point where it felt simple, which is why Zelinskis ended up being that like tackle eligible tight end that they started using after Shermer took over for Lewis, because
Yeah.
they kept losing the numbers game at the line of scrimmage. If you're not going to have a tight end on the field and you're going to run out of shotgun exclusively, you're just not going to be able to do a whole bunch of different things in the running game unless you get creative with pre-snap motion and you're doing,
Yeah.
different things like that. But that's not, I think, what this offense is ever going to be predicated
But I
upon.
will say this though. I mean, they told us they had different tight ends this year, that they've got more tight end guys than they had last year. We know Mikey Harrison wasn't, but we were
I mean,
told that they've got more like tight end guys.
but who were you looking for?
Sam
I'm
Hart.
Yeah, well, that would be the
So
one that I think they can still go. It's been one game, right? Like I'm
Savell
not gonna.
Smalls. I'm just
Yeah,
saying I know it's one game. I'm just saying in that one game, I was surprised against a physical defense
sure.
that they didn't use the tight end a little bit more than they did to try to get some things established at the line of scrimmage.
I would agree with you, especially because that's all they're running out of is shotgun. Like I
Yeah.
think it would actually behoove them a lot to be able to let the running back get ahead of steam, running under center occasionally, or doing some things, maybe even out of the pistol. Like there are some different things you can do. I think it's important though, because it's a it's a part of a bigger topic, right? It's about a full commitment to playing that style. And not using the tight end, kind of going away from the running game. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a half commitment to it. And it's understandable because you have this like supernova as a coach with your passing game and your quarterback. You don't get to have the number one quarterback in the country very often. When you
Yeah.
have him, any coach would want to structure their offense around that. So I understand that. And it's especially
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I know you do too, but it's especially tougher when you're really not confident in your running game to feel like you want to commit to it and your offensive line, which is why I think Coach Prime today essentially alluded to the fact that he was disappointed with how they run blocked. He said, "What I need them to start demand." What did he say? Demand the physicality, right?
Yeah.
He needs that standard. And if you're not going to use the tight end, you better have a line that can move that D line off the ball and open up those holes and be able to get your guard pulled and maybe, do some different things, however you're going to do schematically. They'll learn from it, I'm hoping. It's just going to be a challenge for them. And so, in order to really see it through, it's going to take a full commitment. And
Yeah.
maybe that means it's going to change the way you do some things. But he's told us his philosophy on this. So I don't think it is going to change, because he told us that he said if he feels like he's got a better option at receiver, he'd rather that guy be on the field, even if he's not a better option, which that's a philosophical approach that he's choosing to take. And we'll see if the running game continues to struggle. They have to try different things. But I
Yeah.
also don't want to be too overreactionary to just one game of results, because I think that's also a trap to fall into. Last part. That being said, it was what they did all last year. So it's
Right.
really not unthinkable to think that that could be an easy trap to fall back into. It's got to be different. And I'm hoping, and I can see him trying to set the standard. We'll see if it works.
And I agree with you. I'm not one that likes to overreact over one game, but the fact that it was the same philosophy as last year
Yeah, it was
is
a
why
little.
it bothers me. And that, yes, you have the best quarterback in the country. Yes, you want to use them. You want those talented receivers on the field, but you've also got to be two-dimensional there. I mean, you've got to have that run game to be your best offense and to be the best you can be. And if they're not going to commit to that, I think it's going to be a hard season. And maybe not get to the 7-8 wins I think they're going to. I think it's going to be difficult if they don't find some sort of run game. And you're looking around. Um, I'm not trying to rub salt in the wounds, but you're looking at like an Anthony Hankerson that was here last year, rushed for 150 at Oregon State. You're looking at different guys around the country doing things, and these offenses are clicking because they've got a guy that can go run the ball, and they've got one or two guys that can go get 70, 80, 100 yards, and I'm not sure Colorado has that right now until we see it. And so I think they need it this week. I think if you can't run the ball this week, you're going to come out of Lincoln with a loss.
Absolutely. And they know that. They know that. I saw that in Coach Prime's face today, and I heard it in his comments. They understand that. They have respect. They have way more respect for Nebraska this year, in my opinion, than they did last year.
Yeah,
And it's hard not to when you take a look at Nebraska's defensive line. I said this the other day. They got like two absolute behemoths on that defensive line. You just have to take them seriously, especially when you've been susceptible to pressure and just allowed a 30% pressure rate against North Dakota State.
yeah,
You've got to clean some things up, and they get that. You're right, Brian. It's not just Nebraska. It's the sustainability, to use Joe Klatt's word, because he's right, of the whole thing, of this
yeah,
whole season. It's if you can't do it that way, and there's a reason why we talked about this, and it's nothing that they don't know. This isn't breaking news to them. But there's a reason why you have to play balanced, is because you have to force the defense to respect the run so everything opens up for your dynamic passing offense.
right,
And that's when you put up the crazy numbers. And that's how you really support your quarterback. But it takes a full commitment. The problem is something is, from either a philosophical standpoint, maybe still a little bit of a talent standpoint, but maybe an attitude and an experience standpoint up front, that we are going to run the ball down your throat and there ain't nothing you can do about it. It's
yeah,
the one thing I have yet to see a Coach Prime Buff team do yet, is just straight up run someone over. I don't know if they can do it this week, and that's not really what I think they should be trying to do this week,
yeah,
but it's more of that attitude. You just have to have it. And the problem is, you can't just add better players and change the coaches. And I'm not saying this is what they think, but it could be part of the thought process, and expect things to be better. Like, it's going to take some cohesiveness. It's going to take better strategy and better planning. And again, it's one game. So hopefully they learn. You're I don't know who said it, which coach said it, but they do say it, all of them. Again, everyone you've covered, and it's a common idiom that, look, the biggest leap in college football happens between week 1 and week 2, because you can break down the film. And let's
yeah,
hope that they are able to clean a lot up. I'll just say this. We all know they're not going to be able to clean everything up.
right.
That's one thing I know.
Well, and
Hopefully they can clean enough up.
yeah, and you asked a great question. He said it was a great question about evaluating game film versus practice. There is value in that. That's why that idiom is true. That there's a lot of growth that happens from game 1 to game 2, because you finally have some game film. Matt, we have to get out of here. We're running out of time here, but it's gonna be fun this weekend in Lincoln. I've been out there twice for a couple of CU Nebraska games. It's an awesome atmosphere. Buff fans, you hate Nebraska, I get that, but the atmosphere is pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it. Matt, I'll see you in Lincoln.
I'll see you in Lincoln. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm a first timer, so it's going to be a new experience. I can't wait. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Sounds good.